Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Policy and Property here on the Wilton Report. And tonight we are talking more affordable housing news. We're going to jump out of the confines of Princeton and we're going to head a little bit west to Pennington Borough. So Pennington Borough is in Mercer County, and it's interesting. And we picked Pennington Borough tonight because it's such a small municipality, right? It's a tiny little postage stamp of a town. Great town, by the way. Great downtown. Good pizza place, good coffee, good barber, right? All the core requirements of my life. But they have an affordable housing obligation, as does Princeton. We spend a fair amount of time talking about Princeton's, and we're going to go every town in the county talking about affordable housing, how the policy may affect the housing in the town. So 58 units, that's the number Pennington has been assigned under New Jersey's latest housing mandate. That's it. That's a lot. Like 58 units in a town the size of Pennington's a lot. And where those units could go can impact zoning, density, development in parts of the borough that we might not expect. So that's what we're here to talk about. So welcome back to the Wilton Report. I'm Josh Wilton. I'm the co-owner, and I run the #1 boutique real estate company here in central New Jersey in the Princeton area. I've helped thousands of people buy and sell real estate, which literally has given me a front row seat to see how local policy impacts homeowners, buyers, investors, tenants, landlords, everybody involved in the real estate space. By the end of this live, right, we're going to hopefully have you understand why Pennington is required to have a plan for 58 additional housing units, how the fourth round rules work, where zoning changes are being focused and forecast, and what that means for homeowners and investors. Lastly, I will give you my opinion as to what impact this policy will have on home values, thus policy and properties. So before we talk about zoning or specific laws, I do want to take a step back and talk about the fourth round compliance period from 2025 to 3035. So in New Jersey, right, there's an affordable housing law. It's actually, I think, enshrined in the state constitution at this point. So under the state law, which is otherwise known as Mount Laurel Doctrine, so if you have been following us, right, you may be familiar. If not, obviously we suggest you subscribe. So under the Mount Laurel Doctrine and Fair Housing Act, municipalities must provide a realistic opportunity for affordable housing. That is a state law. Meet state calculated housing obligations, update compliance plans by housing round. So I can tell you the next housing round in 2026 is March 15th, right? So that's when every town has to get their plans into the state. Otherwise, they get subject to something called builder remedy, which we'll talk about later. Pennington is in its fourth round, which is forecast from 2025 to 2035. So this is their obligations for what's coming. So Pennington's total housing obligations from the original amended housing plan. So the housing's broken down into categories, right? So the fourth round obligation, they're going to have to come up with, excuse me, I sneeze, 58 units. That's the challenge of live YouTube. So 58 units is the number that the town is looking forward to building or has to build. And that's from 2025 to 2035. So these units have to have certain criteria. Meet the state affordability standards, include required income mix. Some units go to an income level of X, some units go to an income level of Y. They have to follow the bedroom distribution rules. They can't all be 1 bedrooms. They can't all be 3 bedrooms. And they have to include minimal rental percentages. Excuse me. So the income limits, let's cover that, right? And one of the things you have to understand, I was talking to Mayor Frieda in Princeton last week on policy and properties, is that this is a tri-county average, right? The income limits. And people can apply to Pennington's affordable housing that when it becomes available from 3 separate counties, not just from the residents of Pennington or Princeton or West Windsor. So the income category, regional median, 1 person, 94,300, 4 person, 134,600, right? Moderate, and that's about 80%, right? 75,000 for 1 person. For a 4-person family, 107,000 combined income. Low income, 1 person is considered 47,150. For 4 people, it's considered 67,300. Very low, again, as determined by the state, is 1 person's 28,290. 4 people is 40,380. So these numbers determine who qualifies for which units, and the towns are obligated to build units for each category, right? So under the New Jersey Uniform Housing Affordability Controls, UHAC, 25% must be rentals. Doesn't matter. This is just statewide. 50% must be family units. So what does that mean? 2 and 3 bedrooms. You can't all build 1 bedrooms here. 13% must be very low income. So again, the very low income for one person is $28,000. For a family of 4 is $40,000. Excuse me. The bedroom mix, studios can be 20% or less. 2 bedrooms, right? 30%, and 3 bedrooms about 20%. And this is not optional. This is state mandated. The state determines what has to be built. The towns determine where it will be built, or they should be determining where it should be built. So the borough previously identified 37 units expected from redevelopment mechanisms. I'll explain what that means in a minute. They also still have 94 units of unmet need remaining from prior rounds. So we'll explain what that means in a minute. So Pennington, the 37 units, Pennington believes it can create 37 affordable units by using tools like redeveloping properties in the borough of Pennington, allowing higher density in specific zones. And we're going to kind of go into that later. Requiring affordable housing set-asides in new projects. So if I go to Pennington and I get approval to build 10 apartments, 2 or 3 of them are going to be affordable housing as dictated by the state rules. The 94 units of unmet need remaining from prior rounds, this is a big one, right? So what this means is from earlier state housing obligations, Pennington still hasn't satisfied 94 required affordable housing units. So they're a little bit behind in terms of their what they're supposed to bring to the market. So even before this new 4th round, Pennington was already behind. So it's sort of important. So you're going to have the 58, and they're going to be catching up from the previous round. So there's going to be a lot of construction going on and a lot of redevelopment going on in the borough of Pennington over the next 10 years as they catch up with this. And I'll explain why that's important. Excuse me. So let's stop here for a second. If Pennington doesn't execute on this plan, or Princeton, or West Windsor, or Cherry Hill, or any town in the state of New Jersey, basically the state can take over the zoning and the planning strategies for that town. And again, I don't want to pick on Millburn, but that's happened in Millburn. There's 27 towns in the state of New Jersey actively suing the state, saying this whole thing is unconstitutional. They've pretty much lost they just lost 2 weeks ago in court. They're now trying to take it to the Supreme Court, right? Which I'm going to suspect they're going to lose. We'll see what happens. But again, if these towns don't have a plan, submit the plan, and then execute the plan, builders can sue the town under a mechanism called builder's remedy. The state takes over, appoints a special master, and then Pennington, theoretically, would lose control of its planning process. So let's look at the identified development mechanisms in Pennington Borough. So Pennington, the town of Pennington, because they are on track, has identified specific sites and zoning strategies to generate units. So again, mixed use highway zone, Howe Commons, if you know where that is, right? 3741 to 43 South Main Street in Pennington, 245 and 250 South Main Street in Pennington. The Levin limousine property, say that 10 times fast. So these are all been identified as opportunities to redevelop housing in Pennington to meet the state housing obligation. So let's do this. So I'm going to share my screen. This is where it always gets tricky when you're live, right? Hopefully you guys can see this. Can we see this? Yes? All right, good. I think we can see it. So this is what it looks like on a map, right? So you can see this is the mixed highway use zone in Pennington, right? And you can see exactly where it is. So the town's got a pretty good plan of like how this is going to go forward. These are other sites identified for affordable housing credits. And you can see the Levin limousine, still can't say it, right? West Franklin 2, West Franklin 1, the center zone, Blackwell, 12 North Main, right? So there's all these little pockets in town that the town is going to allow zoning changes to happen so they can have greater density, right? That builders can come in, right? Redevelop properties. One's already, they're already in place. So, this is already happening in Pennington Borough. Like this is not something that's theoretical. This is something that's happening as we speak. Like it's going through the process. So what's changing now? So this is no longer theoretical. The council has introduced ordinance to implement this plan. The recent council action introduced ordinances to: 1, implement the 4th round of the housing plan, which we just discussed. Adjust zoning districts, meaning they're changing the zoning in certain pockets of the town to allow for more density, right? So like there's going to be more apartments and there could be more condos. I think most of these will be rentals. They will establish inclusionary requirements, meaning they will establish areas where they can do this legally, and they're going to formalize affordable housing overlay compliance. So what does that mean? They're going to define certain sections of town, right, as an affordable housing overlay, which means they can build more housing with less parking, right? That the density rules change, right? So long as the builder contributes to the affordable housing contribution in those affordable housing overlays, the rules, I don't want to say it'll be suspended, but they'll be changed. Princeton has one on Nassau Street, has one on Witherspoon Street, Thanet Circle, right? So Pennington's going to have the same mechanism whereby they can control their own fate in this process. So what this means for Pennington: increased residential density, especially in specific areas. We covered where they are. Mixed use redevelopment. So what does that mean? It means you're going to see older businesses, right? Like Levin Limousine, if they're going to redevelop that whole parcel, that old business will be gone. A new business may go on the ground floor, housing above it. There'll be less parking, right? Because the town's trying to figure out a way to develop without paving over everything in town, right? It's going to be rental, right? Development, a lot of it. And it has to be inclusionary, meaning certain pockets of those developments have to hit the income minimums and maximums as defined by the state. And again, what it means and the objective is, from the state's perspective and the Mount Laurel housing, is long-term demographic diversification for Pennington, for the state. This isn't about Pennington. This is the state of New Jersey. We're just going town by town to kind of give you an idea and show you the maps of what this means. So what does this mean for property owners in Pennington? So density changes are coming, right? There will be more apartments being built in Pennington. So if you're a landlord, right, I would project that home rental prices will not appreciate as fast as they have in the past. Inclusionary zoning affects the development feasibility. So again, they're going to allow more zoning. They're going to open up zoning. They're going to allow more development. Rental requirements influence the project type. So again, in one zone, if it's an affordable housing overlay, you're going to be super dense. In another, you'll be a little bit less dense. So again, this does not automatically equal a value and decline in properties. As a matter of fact, when we get to the end of the show, I'll tell you my opinion on this. But again, the broader Mercer County context of this, Pennington is not unique. I just wanted to focus on Pennington because it's such a micro town and a beautiful town. I'm not saying it in a negative sense. When you drive into Pennington, the first thing you do is you slow down to 25 miles an hour. You're getting a ticket. Like, it is what it is. And you pass all those stately houses, and it's very beautiful. You hit the downtown. The Pennington School's on the other side if you're coming from Princeton. You have Route 31 with all those funky stores right in the market. It's a cool, awesome town. It's going to go through some changes, just as Princeton is going through changes. So Pennington's not unique. So, right, it's a county-wide issue. So my opinion on what's going to happen in Pennington in terms of policy and property. The first question that we get asked a lot is this good for the town? I will tell you, historically, yes, diversity is good for a town, right? And you do hear from people, well, Princeton's changing or Pennington's changing and Hopewell's changing. Tell that to Lenny Lenape people who were here before we were, right? Yeah, it's changing. Change is a constant. It doesn't stop. So the big question we get asked is, what does this mean for rental prices? We get that a lot from investors. What I'm seeing in towns like Princeton, West Windsor, where there's been a lot of development, a lot of rentals brought online, rental prices actually haven't come down, but they've softened in terms of their growth. So I would project for Pennington a little bit of a softening in rental prices because, again, 80% of these projects, for the most part, will be rentals and they'll be at the market rate. So there's going to be a fair number of rentals being brought online in Pennington. What does it mean for property values? What do I think? I think Pennington home prices are going to continue to go up. So if you look at Pennington, really from 2010 to COVID, let's just say 2018, right? Home prices were pretty flat in Pennington. I mean, like they didn't really go up. They stayed consistent, right? They didn't go down. They didn't go up. They were just consistent over time. Pennington went through that crazy COVID spike, right? And it's been pretty much lights out ever since. All of this development, all of this infill, all of this change, in my opinion, and again, 20 years and over $2 billion in real estate later, is that this will not affect home prices in Pennington negatively. I think you'll see continued appreciation as we are in all of the markets. And I think it'll bring some diversity to the downtown of Pennington, which again, I would tell you historically from a housing context is a good thing to have diversity in any particular market. So Q&A, if there's any questions, obviously now is the time to ask them. You can drop their questions in the chat. My amazing director of everything digital is ready to tell me what they are. Though I have to say, like in my defense, I am learning how to use YouTube. So no questions. I covered everything in a record amount of time tonight. Okay. Well, again, if you do have questions, if you want to shoot me a text, 609-773-8054, just shoot me a text. You can always ask me. If you want me to cover your town sooner than we have it in the queue, happy to do that. And again, if there's topics that you want us to talk about, just let us know. We'll happy to talk about them. So again, if you haven't subscribed to the Wilton Report and you care about housing and policy in Mercer County, subscribe. Every Wednesday night, we'll pick a different town, we'll pick a different policy, and we'll talk about how it's going to impact the town or the county and how it might impact real estate values. So again, housing policy shapes development and development shapes property value. That's why we do this. That's why this matters. If you want to see, right, how another Mercer County town handled affordable housing overlays and zoning, I just did a full breakdown on Princeton. I'll link that in the description. And that is it for tonight. We covered Pennington in detail. Any questions, please reach out. I am Josh Wilton. This is the Wilton Report, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.